Trucker Dump for July 10th, 2015, episode 109, Coping with Rookie Truckers.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Greetings and salutations to all you fellow trucker dumpers out there, as Greg called you last week. You know, I'm still not sure whether I like that as well as trucker dumpsters. So, would you rather be called trucker dumpsters or trucker dumpers? I don't know. Both of them are pretty cool. You let me know. Hey, this is Todd McMann here. I guess I should have told you who I was in the beginning. Yeah, Todd McMann. This is my podcast, The Trucker Dump. And I am super glad you are here. Because if you weren't, that means you were somewhere else. And that ain't cool. So hey, tell me what's up in your world. Well, you know, I'm not sure whether they will be up yet or not. But I have been working on getting some new headers done. And a new Trucker Dump logo. And you might check the website for that, abouttruckdriving.com. And for all I know, you may already see the Trucker Dump, the new Trucker Dump logo on this podcast. I'm not sure yet whether it's going to be up yet or not. If it isn't for this one, it will certainly be by the next time. So keep your eyes open for that. Not that big of a deal, but I'm pretty proud of them. I actually had those done over on Fiverr.com, which is a site that will do anything for $5, but quite honestly, most of the stuff I find I want to get done over there usually ends up costing me more than $5. You know, like the girl who does my opening, the opening to this podcast, she charged more than $5. I think I ended up paying her like 10 or 15 because she charged so many words, and my script went a little long, and so I had to pay for like 3 gigs, so it was like $15 or something like that. But they're usually pretty good about reworking stuff for you and without any extra charge and things like that. I've had generally good experience, although I have to say this last time with these logos and everything and this headers, it was not a good experience. The guy who did them was great at first. He did good work. I liked the designs. I like what he did. But he sent them to me. The previews he sent them to me looked really good, and I blew them up to the size I needed and everything, and they were great. And so I approved them, and then I just completely forgot about it. And, you know, he went ahead and sent me the final files and everything. I got them, and when I looked at them, when I finally got around to, you know, doing something with them, it was like a couple of months later, and I look at them, and they're all these teeny tiny little files, and so when I blow them up, they looked horrible. Well, I reached out to him and, tried to get him to fix it, just give me a better quality files. And at first he didn't answer. Finally, I got him to answer. And he said he had just switched computers and he wasn't sure where they were anymore. He wasn't sure where the files were. And he was making all kinds of excuses. And this went on for a month, probably more than that, because it was like 3 weeks between each time he would contact me again, and it just got so frustrating that I finally just took his designs. I took it to another guy on Fiverr, and I said, copy this as best you can and give me some high-quality files. This guy turned the job around in like 24 hours. So eventually happy with it, but boy, I was good and pissed off there for a while. But, you know, generally, like I say, Fiverr is a great place to go if you want to do some cheap stuff, get some cheap stuff done. That's pretty good quality. And actually, I've had some people over there work on my WordPress site for certain little things, and that's always been a good experience too. So check those guys out if you are interested. Fiverr.com. And naturally, it's spelled weird because everything on the internet is spelled weird nowadays. It's Fiverr.com is Fiverr.com. So what else we got going on? Well, let's see. Well, of course, you're going to want to stick around for the feedback section. First, we hear from Brian from Down Under. He takes me to task on something. We have an exchange from Long Duck.
What's happening, hot stuff?
Yeah, you knew that was going to happen. And we hear from Justin, who will go on a rant about amnesty. And if we have time, which I don't think we will, we'll hear another audio comment from Greg. So what else? We have a contest to announce. Okay, this is going to be a bit tricky because I wanted to make sure that you guys knew I wasn't cheating, because, I know some of these are, listeners who write in a lot and stuff like that, and I didn't want any bias to come about, so I wanted to make sure that I recorded this for you guys on a video so you can see how I did it. So let me get that fired up real fast, and I will start the recording, and it may... Okay, let's go here. Whoops. Guess I should switch it to video, huh? Photo won't work very well. Okay, video's rolling. I don't know how good a quality this is going to be. Like I said, this is all kind of done on the fly here. So let's see how this goes. Okay, first, let's bring up the mails that I got. Okay, these are all the mail that I got. I only got 9 entries, so you got a pretty good chance if you've failed to win one of these 3 CDs. By the way, I guess I should mention what this is for. This is for the Trucker Dump, or not the Trucker Dump, the Trucker Country CD by Erich McMann. He was nice enough to offer 3 of them to our listeners, and we'll be getting those out to you as soon as we announce them here. Let's see. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page here, and I need to explain one thing about this because somehow my email got screwed up. Okay, when we go through here, this is in the order I received them backwards. So, number 1 will be, this is the numbers, okay, 1 through 9. Number 1 will be SFC Sapper. Number 2 says Todd McCann, but I swear I am not going to... I'm not winning one for myself. This was sent in by a guy named Kevin, and he... Dadgummit. Qualcomm's beeping. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. Usually I edit that stuff out. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Okay, so anyway, this is from a guy named Kevin. He is number 2. This me man or my man, whatever that is, he's number 3. Lester is number 4. Cheryl's number 5. Edward, number 6. Eric, number 7. Shannon, number 8. And David is number 9. Okay, everybody get that? Okay, now I'm going to go over to random.org, which is a random number generator. I'm going to type in that I have a 9 maximum, 1 through 9, and I'm going to generate. The first 3 numbers that come up are the winners, okay? Does that sound fair? That's the only way I knew how to do it. And I thought the only way to really prove it to you that I did it right without, picking, I don't know, my favorite listeners, which I don't really have any favorite listeners, so to speak, but, you guys don't know that. So, anyway, this is the way I'm doing it. Okay, 1 through 9. I'm going to generate 1, 7. Well, we can't use 7 again. 1, 7, and 2. Okay, y'all get that? All right, isn't this fun? Okay, 1, SFC Sapper. 2 is Kevin. And 7 would be Eric. So hey guys, if you are one of the winners, send in your actual physical address to truckerdump@gmail.com. Put trucker music in the subject line again so I'll find it really fast. And I'll also be sending you out an email letting you know you won in case you didn't listen to this right away. So you should be seeing that email pretty quick. And I will send out one of those, my copy, the copy I was given, and Erich McMann will be sending you the other 2, your copies. So thanks for entering, everybody. And if you haven't heard this music, go back and check out my episode, or what would be even better is just to go to iTunes or go to, what's that other one? He's on Bandcamp or something? Yeah, Bandcamp, I think. and just Google Plays on Google Play, and just sample some of that music. Ooh. So anyway, wow, sorry about that delay. As you can, if you're watching the video, you can see that there's another track right here, and it started playing more audio that I had recorded in. It just totally screwed me up. I totally lost my train of thought. So anyway, I think I finished the video right. I don't know anymore. I'm all confused now. So we'll see how it comes out. Anyway, okay, what else do we have coming up? Well, let's see. I am getting ready to experience something that I have never experienced before. Well, kind of, I guess. I did used to team with the Evil Overlord, but I have never had an actual rider in the truck with me. Somebody who just sits there all day and doesn't actually drive. When, you know, the Evil Overlord and I teamed, we were pretty much within 5 feet of each other 24 hours a day, but, you know, we didn't really see each other that much because we always stayed on a steady schedule. She was driving, I was sleeping, and even if we were down, we would continue that cycle, so somebody was always ready to drive. We just didn't do a whole lot of that, both of us sitting up at the front seats talking for hours on end and cutting ourselves short on sleep. We just didn't do that. But now, I'm going to have a rider for a while. It's not the Evil Overlord, though. It is my nephew, Jared. He's 14. He's coming out here for the first time. It'll be his first extended time in a truck. He's ridden in it for, you know, brief periods, but you know, not very long. I told him he's going to be really bored, but he really wanted to come out. So, hey, you know, whatever. Going to have him for 2 weeks out here with me. It's going to be interesting because this is a solo truck. My passenger seat is bolted to the floor without any shocks or anything. He knows that. He's aware of it. I'm sure his 14-year-old body can handle that a lot better than mine could. There ain't no way I could do it. Or when the Evil Overlord found out about it, she was like, I ain't ever coming out with you with a seat like that. But also, this thing does not have bunk beds or anything. We got one bed. Now, I can assure you, I am not going to be spooning with a 14-year-old boy. So, I mean, we're pretty tight, but we ain't that tight. So, I'm guessing probably what's going to happen is a head-to-foot thing. We're going to probably try that with a big body pillow between us. He'll probably be under the sheets. I'll probably be in a sleeping bag. If that doesn't work, I will just lay on the floor. I used to do that all the time when the Evil Overlord was in the bunk and I didn't feel like cleaning off the top bunk and I just wanted a short nap or even a long nap. I'd just lay down in the floor, kind of snake my feet up through the shifter and up into the passenger side floorboard, and I could sleep fine that way. Of course, I was a lot younger then, so I don't know, maybe I'll put the nephew down there. We'll just have to see how all this goes. But anyway, it's going to be an interesting experiment, and since he's going to be out here, I guess you guys can probably imagine that there will be something about that on the next podcast, so stay tuned for that. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do, how much I'll talk about it, whether it will engulf the whole podcast or whether it'll just be a little ditty. We will have to see about that. I've got some other stuff planned for the future, some reviews and stuff like that of some software and some hardware and stuff like that. So that's all pretty cool. But for now, I guess we have rambled on long enough. Let us get on with today's post. It's pretty self-explanatory. We call it Coping with Rookie Drivers. There are approximately 3.5 million truckers in the U.S., so naturally that means we can't all be seasoned veterans. We drivers probably encounter at least one trucker per week doing something that would only be done by a rookie. We shake our head in disgust, but what do we do about it? From what I've seen, the vast majority of us do absolutely nothing. Or worse. Now, as typical with the Trucker Dump podcast, most of my ideas come from things that have recently happened to me, which begs the question how long I'll be able to continue doing this podcast if I can ever escape the trucking industry like I've been trying to do for the past decade. But I guess we'll cross that crusty old underfunded bridge when we get to it. But for now, let's continue on with the story that prompted this post. A few weeks ago, I was sitting in Fort Smith, Arkansas, wondering how my company was going to get me home. Now, I've been working for this company long enough to know that they didn't have much freight running north from there, so things were looking about as good as a naked 80-year-old. Luckily, this was a Thursday, and I wasn't due home until the weekend, so at least they had some time to work up some kind of miracle. Still, I was flabbergasted when I got a message telling me to pick up a load in Joplin, Missouri, some 140 miles away. Now, the sucky thing about this was that I'd be driving right past my house in order to go pick up the load. Now, isn't it funny how trucking companies don't have a problem eating the cost of 140 unloaded miles to pick up a load, but they'd rather put live kittens in a blender than to deadhead a driver home at half the distance? Well, at least that's the way my company is anyway. Quick, new subject before I get pissed. The other annoying thing about it was that the load didn't pick up until the next afternoon, and the guy who'd be relaying it from me wouldn't come off his 10-hour break until late that night. Oh well, this happens sometimes, so I'm used to it. Yeah, it blows chunks to sit at a truck stop less than 50 miles from your house for half a day when you should be home, but it's the price you pay for living out in the boonies. Well, that and the whole lack of indoor plumbing thing. So anyway, I picked up the load and nabbed a spot at the Flying J in Joplin. After a quick call to the evil overlord, she had grudgingly decided to get out of bed and meet me in Joplin so we could hang out in town instead of me spending all day in the truck. Luckily, she didn't need to after all. The relay driver called me shortly after and told me he'd be there within a few hours. This made the evil overlord especially happy because she wouldn't have to crawl out of bed in the middle of the afternoon, heaven forbid. Apparently, the driver's satellite hadn't updated in quite a while, which led my dispatcher to believe that the driver was in the middle of a 10-hour break, when in fact, it was almost over. Sweet! Actually, though, the relay driver's precise words were, "I think my break is almost over." You think? You think? Now, how does a trucker not know when their break's over? This was my first indication that I might be dealing with a rookie. But I let it slide and asked him to get there as soon as possible. Well, he showed up about 2 hours later than what he said he would, so apparently he had figured something wrong, which is odd considering my company uses e-logs. I'm guessing he must have been doing an 8-hour split sleeper berth, because otherwise the e-logs are pretty good at telling you when your break is over. Now, ours still suck at splitting though. I have no idea why. Still, I wasn't going to complain about his tardiness since I really hadn't expected him to get there until late that night. Further evidence pointing to him being a rookie came almost immediately. He rounded the corner and stopped when he saw me. I waved to let him know it was me he was looking for. He then started to do a blindside back directly across from me. What the? Now, had this been late at night, I might have thought he didn't want to risk losing the parking spot by driving around the lot to set up a proper driver's side back. But the lot was only about 3/4 full. There were lots of places where he could have found an easier backing job, including one just a few spaces down past me. Now, I honestly don't understand this. When I was a rookie, I'd rather have licked a leper's sores than do a blindside back. I simply cannot imagine anyone doing one unless they absolutely had no other choice. And there's almost always a choice not to if you figure some way around it. But instead, he went ahead and got himself all jammed up between me and the spot he wanted. He got to the point where he could barely move. It reminded me a lot of that scene in Austin Powers where he's trying to turn around in that little cart. I've included a link to that if you've never seen that. As soon as I had enough room to escape, I went ahead and pulled out from my drop trailer so we'd have some extra room to maneuver, which was exactly what I needed to get back into the spot. By the way, I've done this for experienced drivers too. It takes less than a minute for an experienced driver to drop a trailer, and the gesture will always be appreciated. Now, I will admit during this whole time, I was sitting in my driver's seat watching this train wreck happen. What I should have done was get out and help this poor guy. But how exactly do you help in this situation? Now, personally, I've never been a fan of getting out and helping a driver back into a spot. I have been known to be an extra set of eyes if I see someone really struggling, but I'm not a fan of the type of driver who stands there and tells the driver which way to turn his wheels. This is mainly because there are more than one way to do a proper backing job, and I have no idea what this guy's going for. We'll have more on this subject here in a bit. As a side note, if you're a driver trainer, don't do this to your student. I've watched countless times where a student is looking at the trainer while backing instead of watching what the truck and trailer are doing. You aren't teaching them anything, except how to watch you, maybe. We learn best by trial and getting stopped by trainer just before error, you know. So just let it happen. Well, all said and done, this whole backing and swapping process took about 20 minutes. While he was unhooking from his trailer, I walked the paperwork over to him and told him I was expecting him to get there a couple of hours ago. Now, no, I'm not a jerk. Well, not in this case anyway. I said this all in a teasing manner. He looked at me sheepishly and I asked, "Are you new?" "Yep." "New to this company or new to trucking?" "I've been out of driving school for 1 month. My trainer just dropped me off and I just got my truck." Wow. If you're anything like me, drivers, it's hard to remember what it's like, isn't it? He then started fumbling about as to what satellite messages he was supposed to send after doing a relay and asking what paperwork he needed to send into the company. I explained all the procedures to him as quick as I could since I was eager to get home. I then hooked up to my empty trailer, got back in the truck, and looked over at the guy awkwardly hooking up his glad hands. Drivers, remember when glad hands were hard? Now I think we can do them in our sleep, which is something I'm pretty sure I've done before when the evil overlord used to wake me up in the middle of the night to do that kind of stuff. Frankly, I'm surprised we didn't regularly drop trailers to the ground with the landing gear still up. I think God must have spoken to me at that moment because although I was itching to get moving, I felt a bit more compassion for this guy than I normally have in my cold, dead heart. I sighed and stepped out of the truck. I walked over and with a friendly smile said, "Hey man, I'm not trying to be a know-it-all, but can I give you a couple of pieces of advice?" Now I'm sure some arrogant rookies would have passed, but to this guy's credit, he smiled and said, "Please." I began. First, don't ever do a blindside back unless you have absolutely no choice. At a truck stop, always drive around the lot until you can line up a driver's side back. And if you're trying to get to a customer's dock off a street or something, circle a couple of blocks if you need to. Listen, you will have to blindside back sometime in the future, but it's always dangerous, even for experienced drivers. And the more you do it unnecessarily, the more chances you have of hitting something. You really don't need that this early in your career, do you? He replied with a truly grateful, "Thanks, I'll remember that." I went on. Now, see that Warner truck up there between those two other trucks? Now this is audio here, so try to picture this. Picture back-to-back parking where the two trucks facing us are one spot apart, and when you look down between them, you can see the back of the Warner truck facing the other direction. I went on. Don't ever try to nose in between those two trucks like that to park where the Warner is right now. I went on to explain that no matter how far he got over to the side, he would be extremely lucky if he could pull that maneuver off. It can be done, but it fails more often than not. I explained to him that I had been delayed for a whole hour one night at that very location watching a guy who got himself all jammed up trying to do that. In that particular instance, I had actually broken my normal practice by getting out and telling the flustered driver which way to turn his wheels to escape the situation. To be quite honest though, it had less to do with me being a super nice guy, and more to do with him blocking the way from me and about 5 other trucks. And again, I was trying to get home, so I was pretty motivated that time too. In the end, I had to wake up the driver next door and ask him if he'd mind dropping his trailer and moving his tractor so the guy could go ahead and pull through. At first he was acting like he wasn't going to do it, but he changed his mind after I said, "Listen man, this guy's freaking out over here. He's been stuck like this for an hour. You can either drop your trailer or you can have your fender ripped off. Your choice." I even told him that if he'd pull his trailer brakes, I'd be happy to unhook everything for him. He took me up on that, so the lazy bum never even had to leave his cab. So that is eventually how we got out of that Lindsay Lohan-sized mess. So anyway, back to our current rookie. Before I left, I made sure that he understood that he could rescale the load for $2 with the weigh ticket I had given him, as long as it was within 24 hours and it was the exact same location. I assured him that they never check to see if the truck number matches. All they need is the reweigh number on the ticket. I thought he probably already knew this, but I was wrong. He was grateful for the advice and for saving him $8.50, and I pulled out ready to head for home. Now, in hindsight, had I chosen to keep my advice to myself, I wouldn't have a second half to this story. Oh well, nice guys finish last. Just as soon as I pulled out, feeling all good about myself, another driver down the way had just started to back into a spot. It was 2 spaces wide, so I figured he'd go pretty quick. But as the evil overlord likes to tell me so often, you're wrong. And just as often, she's right. Just as I was this time. Well, I watched that driver trying to back in for 10 minutes. Forward, reverse, often with very little change in what he had done before. He started with the wide open driver's side back and kept going until he eventually ended up in a blind side back. I'm still not really sure how he managed that. Every time he'd try to back in, the driver next to him would lay on his horn, which naturally brought him to an abrupt stop. I could see this was going nowhere good and traffic was backing up behind me, so I hopped out, signaled the other waiting drivers what I was doing, and walked over to scope out the situation. The guy had gotten himself into a 45-degree blindside back. His trailer tires were already between the lines and the doors had already cleared the mirror, but he was crooked. Now I could see that he could probably make it with one little correction. I walked over and told the honker dude I thought the guy could make it if he'd just quit honking his horn at him. The guy yelled at me, "He's gonna hit me." I said, "Well, I don't think so, but if you're convinced of it, why don't you go over and pull your mirror in so he won't?" The hothead shot back, "I shouldn't have to do that. He should pull out of the spot and go find someplace else to park." Well, I confessed to him that he was probably right about that, but I also explained that at this juncture it wasn't really an option with all of us blocking him in. He had nowhere to go. Now I have to admit that the stuck driver, who I found out later was in his first year of driving, wasn't letting Sir Screams a lot affect him. He was smiling at the whole situation, even though he probably shouldn't have been. I kind of respected the guy for not letting old Wienerhead get to him. Still, he was stuck, and he knew it. That's when he pointed at me, and then to his tractor. In broken English, he said, "You do?" Okay. Now, before you old-timers tell me how stupid this is, let me say that I'm well aware. If I hit someone, he could blame me, and I'm sure the little green lizard's employers would have a field day with it, too. But hey, I wanted to get home. Besides, Captain Krabby Pants had finally gotten out of his truck to make darn sure no one was going to hit his precious mirror. So into the cab I climbed. Thankfully, I'm not a germaphobe, else I had been freaking the heck out. That truck was nastier than a Nicki Minaj video. Anyway, he who must be paranoid seemed a bit more confident when I got behind the wheel. Still, he insisted on directing my every move. He had me turning my wheels this way and that with about 4 pull-up adjustments. At that point I stopped, looked at him and said, "Oh, come on, man. I can't even see that side and I can tell you I'm nowhere close to your truck." Now I knew that if he'd just hold his tongue for a second, I could swing the tractor back under and finish the job. But I admit that it would have meant that the front of the trailer would have crossed into his no zone for a brief moment. So instead, I chose to let Mr. Alpha have his way. We did get the job done, but thanks to him being a complete anus, it took about 3 moves longer than it should have. Oh well, like my trainer taught me, a good back is one where you don't hit anything. Doesn't matter how long it takes. Wise words. So naturally, you know they didn't come from me. So here's the thing, drivers. You have experience. Great. But let me take a second here to remind you that there was a time when you were a rookie too. We all were. Not one of us had a grip on the air-powered umbilical cord as we floated from 4th to 6th gear into this world. And even if you did learn to drive on the farm when you were 12, I'd be willing to bet you screwed up a time or 2. Or 14. And before you make that claim, give me your dad's phone number. I'll get the real story. So what say we remember that the next time we're confronted with a rookie who's having a really crappy day? The last thing they need is some irate driver screaming at them or belittling them. Nor do they need to hear your snide remarks on the CB. What they need is tolerance. What they need is a helping hand. What they need is an extra set of eyes. What they need is a driver who's willing to offer some friendly advice. And if you're not willing to give these rookies what they need, then what those rookies really need is a set of brass knuckles to punch you right in the kisser. Now let's see you try to scream at him with a mouthful of broken teeth.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
That's right, kids, it's feedback time. Yay! Oh, where did I get this stuff? I don't have any idea. Okay. All right, I think I mentioned that we were going to start out with Brian, who takes me to task. Yeah, he does. This was the kind of email when you first read it, I think, wow, this guy's kind of a jerk. But it didn't take me very long before I realized that he's just a cut up and he's just joking through the whole thing, and I love it. And we had a few exchanges, and I just loved every bit of it. So we're going to hear from Brian. And Brian is from Down Under. He says, I've caught up with all your episodes, and I decided to give you some more feedback. Get off your lazy arse and post more stuff. You have 38-hour resets every week. That's 34, Brian. From what you're saying in the podcast. Surely after you've had a nap, that'd give you more than enough time to pump out a podcast. And as a side note, there's no need to keep apologizing for the noise. We can't hear it. I think I mentioned that in the last podcast, that Brian was the guy who told me this and ragged on me about it. He goes on and says, here's another side note. Your CAPTCHA thing is still broken, so that may be part of the reason you don't get as many comments on this, maybe? Well, I'm loaded and I've got my paperwork. Hope the cook, the evil overlord, is recovered. Talk to you soon. Brian the Truckee. And I don't know how many of you know this, but over in Australia, they call them truckies, not truckers. Personally, I think it sounds cooler, but then again, we always think foreign stuff is cooler. I wonder if they think the same thing about us. No, I doubt it. We Americans are too arrogant. I'm sure they don't want to make us think we're cooler in any possible way. Well, dude, Brian, way to call me out on having enough time to do more podcasts. Now, please kindly unsubscribe to the podcast. Kidding. I need every listener I can get. God knows I don't have enough. Seriously, though, I don't do very many 34-hour restarts that much anymore. I think it just seems like that because I'm talking about them when I'm doing a podcast, which I'm only getting done because I have 34 hours to do it. That is a big part of it, but another part is that I just don't get a lot of downtime, and I honestly don't feel like spending 7 to 10 hours working on a podcast every time I have some downtime. All work and no play make Jack a grumpy dude, you know, or something like that. As for the constant apologies for the noise, I apologize. Seriously, though, I do realize that I need to quit apologizing for something no one can hear. When I listen back, I'm honestly astounded that I can't hear it. And I listen to it in earbuds. If I can't hear it then, I'm sure none of you can when you're listening through the crappy speakers made of Folgers cans in your truck. I think I just do it out of frustration because it always seems so loud when I'm trying to record. Thanks for letting me know, though. I'll try not to mention it again. And I didn't this episode, so aren't you happy about that? As for my broken CAPTCHA, well, it's not. For the record, the CAPTCHA is the little thing that has on my comment on the blog that makes you do a little math thing. But you know, Brian, I checked the day after I received your email, and it worked fine for me, and I had another one of my Twitter followers check it, and it worked fine for them. So, are you sure you don't just need a refresher course in elementary math? Don't they teach you anything in Australia? And for the record, you'll be happy to know that the evil overlord went to see her doctor not too long ago, and she has been completely cleared. She is 100% fine. Well, as fine as she can ever be, I guess. So thanks for inquiring anyway. And he wrote me back and said, I see lots of words there, but all I hear is blah, blah, blah. Seriously, you're on the road for 3 weeks or more at a time. You keep reminding us that there's a voice app on our smarty phones. Samsung is my choice. They're simply better than Apple's. Oh, Brian. You know, we all have the right to be wrong sometimes, and now is your time. He goes on and says, so you could make voice memos to yourself while driving when you think of topics to write about. Ramble on. Listen to them when you're at the shipper or receiver. Make that into legible, maybe even a logical blog post. You're halfway there. Then do your recording and editing bit, pay it up online, and bingo boingo. Another one is done. You know this, though, and choose to ignore it. It's your podcast, and you don't seem to mind them being so far apart. I tried to do iTunes review for you, but that didn't work because I'm not on iTunes anymore. Well, that's brilliant, Brian. He finishes by saying, maybe I'll send you a voice thing at some point. I can't now because I'm lying in bed next to the cook, and I'm pretty certain that I'd rather disappoint you than cop a stab wound with a blunt, rusty knife. Well, Brian, sounds like you and the evil, or your wife and the evil overlord would get along really, really well. They might even be able to share rusty implements. Oh, and one last thing, Brian. I don't know if you could hear it, but there was a truck backing in next to me. It was so freaking loud. I mean, I can't believe you guys didn't hear that. I mean, really. I mean, it was so loud that... Next up, we hear from friend of the show, Long Duck. Wait for it.
What's happening, hot stuff?
God, I'm pathetic. He writes in, he had just listened to Why Truckers Don't Have Butts. And he put in the subject line of this email, How to Stop a Runaway Talking Driver. He says, I just listened to Why Truckers Don't Have Butts. This is what I do to stop a runaway conversation. While the other driver is talking, I put my hand down my pants and scratch me balls. Yes, he said me. Then I sniff me hand and say, smell like it's time for a shower. Then I walk off. Okay, Long Duck. Do you really do that? I'm not sure I believe you. But you know what, guys? He never responded to me on this. He never said he did or he didn't. So, what that tells me is, Long Duck, if I ever meet you, don't be offended if I don't shake your hand. Okay, and since that one was so short from Long Duck, we will, short but very profound, we're going to catch one more of his. He says, I'm listening to Trucker Dump 96 on an iPhone that's doing some crazy stuff right now while typing on my Droid. Wow, that's a bit confusing, but hey, okay, whatever you got to do. By the way, Trucker Dump 96 was the feedback show, dedicated 24/7, nothing but feedback. The whole thing, feedback, answering emails. Finally got caught up with that one, and now I'm behind again, of course. Okay, he goes on and says, now the pro for e-logs. During a fatal accident, I can legally prove that I was supposed to be there. Second, it keeps the trucking companies honest. Now, I myself haul a reefer for night. If I'm running behind, it's no big deal. I just give an excuse to dispatch and get there when I get there. My company pays me for detention. As for auto shift, I love it, maybe because I'm old, 43, and I was talking to a younger driver, 24, who said he wouldn't drive an auto shift. I asked him why. He said something about comfort and having one of those tall shifters. Basically, he wanted to be cool. I said this to him. You're not in high school, so it doesn't matter if you're cool or not. I doubt that he even shifted anything greater than a 10. I myself used to drive an 18-speed. Junior didn't have a comeback. Hopefully I hear back on this in a feedback. Hint, hint, on a Trucker Dump episode. Testing, testing, testing. Well, you're on it, Long Duck. So there you have it. Okay. Well, at first when he sent me this, I did overlook his email. So I wrote him back and said, hey man, sorry, it looks like I overlooked your email. I'm not quite sure how I keep botching all this email stuff up, but on the bright side, I'm finally getting really good at something. Unfortunately, being a bonehead wasn't exactly what I had in mind. I don't know why I suck at email so bad, I just do. As for your points about the e-logs, well, I thought of one additional one. Not only do they keep the company honest, they keep the drivers honest. Now, as a Christian, I try to obey the laws of the land because that's what the Bible instructs me to do. But like any driver who gets paid by the mile, it was really hard not to tweak the paper logs when I needed to. And don't get me wrong, I never ran 2 logbooks or was more than a few hours off, but I actually prefer it now that I don't even have that option. Although, every once in a while, I do still long for the days when I could fudge an extra 15 minutes. But nowadays, I just take it in stride, like you said. You said you just make up some excuse. I don't even do that. I just tell dispatch what happened. If I can't deliver on time because I'm not willing to speed, they can deal with it. It's not my responsibility to break the law because they can't plan loads worth of crap. If I had to drive over my hours because of long load times, well, that's not my problem either. If it happens enough, maybe they'll get on the horn with the FMCSA and force them to get rid of the idiotic 14-hour rule. And hey, if it's my fault, well, then I just take the heat. Although when you're a super trucker like me, you rarely make any mistakes. As for the auto shift trucks, I'm with you. I dig them, especially in slow-moving traffic. Now, I haven't driven one in a long time, but I talked to a driver recently who said they've gotten a lot smarter since I've driven one. In the past, I could skip one gear by doing it manually, but that was it. Nowadays, some of the auto trannies will do whatever is smarter. So, if you're starting out on a steep downhill slope, it might skip 3 or 4 gears. Or if you're pulling a light load on level ground, it might start out in 3rd gear and then skip up to 5th and again up to 7th. Now, that sounds pretty sweet to me. I'd love to try one of these new ones out, but hey, I'm not willing to change companies just to try one. But here's the part about your email I just don't get. That 24-year-old wanted one of those tall gangster shifters for comfort? A sphincter says what? How could shifting one of those possibly be comfortable? It reminds me of my 20s when I owned a Suzuki GSX-R 750. At the time, it was the fastest production bike on the market. I love the acceleration in that thing, but it was so uncomfortable to ride that I hated taking it out for very long. Why? The arm position was horrible. The whole time I was riding, I was pushing down on the handlebars. It always caused my arms to fall asleep. Similarly, I think of this every time I see a guy riding a chopper with his handlebars way up in the air. How can that be comfortable? If your arms are higher than your head, physics demands that you aren't getting as much blood circulating through your arms. Same goes for the tall shifter in a truck. I look at those guys and just shake my head. Yeah, I was young once and I'd do stupid stuff to look cool too. But even in my 20s, I was smart enough to sell that stupid motorcycle and buy something more practical, like a Jeep. Well, wait, while it was more comfortable, it didn't reduce my stupidity. In fact, I think it might have powered it to a whole new level. But we won't go into that. One last note, don't be poking fun at drivers who can't shift anything greater than a 10-speed. I've driven for almost 18 years and I've driven nothing but 10 speeds. Now, I imagine I could figure out other trannies pretty quick, but why bother? I rarely come across a situation when I wish I had more than 10 gears. Sure, an extra few gears would come in handy in the mountains, but honestly, how often do you really need 18 gears? Well, it's just like I thought in the beginning. I have a feeling, I don't really know exactly, like I think I've mentioned before, I don't know how long these podcasts are actually going to be until I get them all edited and everything, but I know the actual blog post portion of it was like 3,000 words long, and that's even long for me. So I have a feeling we probably just better cut Greg out of that this time. We'll put him off till next episode. He had another audio clip for us, and but you know what? He said in his email that these are to use at my discretion, so I'm sure he'll be cool with that. I do appreciate you sending that in, Greg, and we'll get you on the next one. So let's finish up with a new listener. This guy is named Justin. Actually, I had to tease him about his name a little bit, because, hey, that's what I do. His name is Justin Case. Yes, really, Justin Case. He was listening to episode 106, which was How Will Amnesty Affect the Trucking Industry? He writes, the entire controversy can be put to bed with the definition of one word, illegal. Action on said definition will only be effective if the current American regime will secure all borders, stop using illegal invaders as a boost to the Obamacratic voter rolls. The fence jumpers, the river swimmers, should and must be returned from whence they came. I'm all for immigration, that of the legal variety. The trucking industry will not bode well with the influx of illegal invader drivers. Number one reason, most cannot read, write, understand English, the language of most signage, bills of lading, directions, etc. 2. Safety, vehicle, operational, personal. It seems to be an afterthought with the illegal invaders. Number 3, of the current crop of invaders, getting the point here, guys, who can access how many terrorists have crossed over, masquerading as said invaders, and await some sort of mass destruction on American soil. As an owner-operator with Crete Carrier in the early to mid-2000s, I had at least one load per month to Laredo, Texas. If one wants to see what's going to happen in the lower 48, one has but to go to Laredo to see the miscreants in action. Dude. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that your real name is just in case, and I'm going to really try very hard not to use any really bad puns that were just waiting to come off the tip of my tongue. But I'm sure you've heard them all, so I don't need to go there. So anyway, hey, thanks for weighing in on this heavy subject. You know, amnesty, man, that's a rough one. You know, I'm sure your sentiments are shared by many with, you know, your invaders. As for Laredo, I haven't been there in many years, but I've heard the stories of illegals crawling under or hiding out in the trailers. It's scary stuff to know that you could be in big trouble if you forget to check your trailer, only to find it's full of illegals when you get to the border station. That's really, really scary stuff. Well, again, though, Justin, thanks for writing in and sharing your thoughts on that. And hey, if any of you people out there have ever actually had any experience with something like that happening down in Laredo, or I don't know, maybe saw an illegal trying to get on a truck or something like that, something personal, not just something hearsay, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love for you to write in and tell me the story. I just think that'd be really cool. Not that it happened to you or your friend or whoever, but you know, that you actually saw it happening. Because you hear this stuff all the time, but you know, I never really see anything like that happening. So, of course, I don't go down there anymore. Maybe it's gotten a lot worse. I'm sure it is if Justin's been down there. That's what he says. I'll have to take his word for it. So, hey, well, I think that about does it for this roundup. Like I say, I don't know how long this is going to be because I'm pretty sure the intro went long. I know the main portion of the blog post went long, and I think I kept the comments down to a minimum this time. Okay, so what do we got? Nothing. Music. So, what kind of driver are you? Do you help people, especially rookies, when they need a hand, or are you the one screaming at them? Well, I'm guessing if you're the latter, I won't be hearing from you, which is sad because I'd really like to hear your reasons. Either way, you can leave your comments at abouttruckdriving.com by searching for TD109, or you can email me at truckerdump@gmail.com. I'm not on Twitter as much as I used to be, but you can still give me a shout over there. I'm at Todd McCann. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. And I just recently discovered that iTunes reviews are country specific, so if you've left one outside the US, I can't see it, but thanks. And as always, thanks for listening. So until next time, drive safe, stay out of my way.